I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. Life often calls us to a journey of transformation. We see it time and again in popular culture and literature. Neo, in The Matrix, for example, receives a cryptic message on his computer to follow the White Rabbit. The ghost of Hamlet's father appears and tells him he was murdered. And Katniss Everdeen in The Hunger Games volunteers to take her sister's place in a brutal competition. In each case, the hero is called to transform and ultimately to return with insights that serve their community. Each of us, in our own way, experiences that same call to action. For many, it shows up in midlife, as a divorce, a health scare, a new job, a big move. More and more people have been asking me, lately at least, how do we recognize these moments and how do we move through them with intention? And that's why I am resharing one of the most impactful conversations I've had on Leadovation. The first time I spoke with Chip Conley was back in November of 2024, and his stories and practical insights struck a deep chord, not just with me, but with many of our listeners. Of the 260 plus interviews I've hosted, this one remains a standout. So here is a rebroadcast of my conversation with Chip Conley on the Leadovation podcast. Well, good morning, Chip. It's a real pleasure and honor to have you on the show. Thought I'd start you off with a basic question. What is the Modern Elder Academy? And why did you create it? What was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah. So quick story on my background, because it really leads up to it. I, for 24 years, was a boutique hotelier. I started the world's, one of the biggest boutique hotel companies in the world, called Joie de Vivre, based in San Francisco. We had 52 hotels around the state of California over the course of the 24 years that I was CEO. In my late 40s, I really struggled. I didn't want to do it anymore. I had a lot of things going on in my life that were just problematic. And so I was sort of at the low point of my life satisfaction. And I also lost 5 male friends to suicide, ages 42 to 52, during a 2.5-year period. So it was a tough time. I had an NDE. I died, went to the other side because of an allergic reaction to an antibiotic. And that was like, okay, I need to change something. And so I sold my company. I got out of a bunch of things I was doing, and I had some space in my life to sort of reimagine, okay, how do I want to experience midlife and later? And so that was at age 50. At 52, I was approached by the founders of Airbnb, a little tech startup 12 years ago that nobody had heard of. And they said, listen, we want you to come in and be our modern elder. I was like, well, you're making fun of my age? What the hell? And they said, but I was 52 and the average age in the company was 26. It was a small little startup. And I joined them for 7.5 years, 4 years full-time, 3.5 years part-time. And we helped the company move up to being the world's most valuable hospitality company. And what an experience that was. So the Modern Elder Academy sprouted out of that fertile ground. It sprouted out of the ground of, in my late 40s, I struggled, and I sort of felt like, geez, you know what? If this is how the rest of my life's going to be, I'm really struggling that I would have to live this way. And then I got into my 50s and I loved it. And there's this thing called the U curve of happiness. It's a social science research that has shown that, generally speaking, after age 50 to 52, people get happier and happier after having a bottoming out around age 47 to 50. And long story short is I wanted to create a place, and I doubled down on the modern elder term. They called me the modern elder, but then they said, Chip, a modern elder is someone who's as curious as they are wise. And I loved that. It's like, oh, okay. There's you can be relevant in your 50s and your 60s and your 70s and beyond. And so MEA was created as the world's first midlife wisdom school, dedicated to helping people reimagine and repurpose themselves when they're going through navigating transitions of midlife and beyond, trying to cultivate purpose, build their sense of wisdom in the world, and reframe their relationship with aging. Because when you shift your relationship on aging from a negative to a positive, you gain 7.5 years of additional life.
You mentioned that we're happier when we get older. And I think when you and I met, we were at a conference over at Harvard. And I remember seeing, I think your slide or somebody else's slide on happiness, that there was an interesting laugh in the audience because there was this comment that was made that when your kids leave home, the parents' happiness goes up. And then when their kids come back, that goes back down again. So is your comment about happiness at an older age related to the responsibilities and stresses of being parents, or is there something else that goes on when we get older that we have the opportunity for greater happiness?
Yeah, there's no doubt that there are many variables that lead to 45 to 52 being the low point of happiness. Sandwich generation, taking care of parents while taking care of kids at the same time, that's a primary one. Another one is that you come face to face with some disappointments. When you're 35 and you haven't accomplished it all yet, I'm going to go out and get it. But by the time you get to 50, you probably can see the handwriting on the wall for the future. And that can sometimes lead to what Brené Brown calls the midlife unraveling. You have to unravel your expectations. Your body is starting to fall apart around that age. You are coming face to face with mortality in your family and maybe in your own life. So there's a lot of reasons for that. On the other side, the flip side, like, okay, that's why you have the low point. Why does it get better as people get older? For one, we build our emotional intelligence. IQ doesn't grow with age, but EQ does. And so as we deal with circumstances at age 50 and older, it's not like you don't have bad circumstances. You do. I have cancer right now, and I have stage 3 cancer, and I'm dealing with it. But how I deal with stage 3 cancer at 64 is different than if I was 24. And so the bottom line is emotional moderation and EQ is helpful. Another thing that's really critical is just the fact that you get to a place where you realize you're satisfied with what you have. You're not so focused on the striving. You're focused on the contentment with what you do have. So gratitude is something that picks up after age 50. Our relations, the value we place on relations grows with age. And it's the number one variable for living a longer, healthier, happier life. So, almost like as an evolutionary response, people after 50 start getting focused on relationships again, especially after they've been on the treadmill in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and maybe some of the friendships atrophied. So there's a lot of variables. I wrote a book called Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age. And in that book, I really outline all of these pro-aging messages.
Abraham Hicks, so I'm sure you've followed their work before. And I always thought as a kid, does it always require some sort of a crisis, or as what they would say, some sort of contrast that would sort of wakes up the spirit to get us to think about purpose, to get us to think about something that we need to create some sort of intentionality around that? So you've had your licks. You just mentioned cancer. You've mentioned this near-death experience. We talk about midlife as being the time that we have to sort of face some of these disappointments and move on. Is it always, and I'm just trying to be the cup half full person here, right? Is it always requiring some sort of contrast to get us to be intentional around something that's positive? Or can we just simply say, you know what, I have a wonderful life now, and there is no problems at this moment, but I can still create some sort of intentionality to move myself forward? Is contrast always needed for creation?
Well, what it does is it gets your attention. So when circumstances fall apart, you have to take notice. So is it a cancer? Is it a car crash or cancer or something like that you have to have? Do you have to have an NDE like I had
Hmm.
to have your hotelier wake up call, which is the way I look at it now? The real reason I wanted to no longer be in the hotel business, so I had to have a wake up call. Um, I think that the value in the contrast or the circumstance being a problem is that it's a catalyst for action,
Hmm.
and it forces you to give it attention. Can you do it without it? Absolutely. I see it all the time. We have lots of people come to the Modern Elder Academy, MEA, who are not going through some devastating circumstance in their life, but they have just an sort of a gut feeling like something's just not quite right. And they don't want to keep doing it the way they've been doing it. And so part of the reason I created MEA was because I wanted people to not feel like they have to have a devastating experience, and they had resources available to them as they started to feel like, you know what, something, I want to make some change in my life, but I'm not sure how to do it. I want to navigate, selling my business, or, um, a divorce that's coming up,
Hmm.
or being an empty nester. And so we don't really have social infrastructure for people in midlife and
Hmm.
later to help you to understand, like, how do you navigate these transitions. When you're an adolescent, you have all kinds of social infrastructure. When you're an middlescent, which is what we are in midlife, not so much. Midlife I define as 35 to 75, and that comes from a lot of sociologists now. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of people say, like, oh, 75 is not midlife, but guess what? If more and more people are living to 100, 75 is midlife, and a lot of people are working into their 70s by choice or necessity. So I would just say, midlife is a life stage that has been, it's sort of, has a bad brand. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
The midlife.
Right.
So what I've tried to do is to try to be a midlife activist, to demystify and elevate this era of life, so people can see that midlife is not necessarily just a crisis. It could also be a chrysalis. And as we know from the caterpillar to butterfly journey, the chrysalis is where the transformation happens.
Yep. You mentioned social infrastructure, and I want to kind of play upon that for a second here. I just was looking in the mail today that I got this Harvard Business Review that says on the cover, "We're still lonely at work."
Mm.
And then we know from the work of our current Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, he's saying that, you know what, I'm not going to focus on obesity. I'm not going to focus on diabetes. I'm focusing on loneliness and isolation.
Yeah.
I know from my own personal life, I had a very, engaging, vital mother. And when she got into her COVID and had to be, locked into a room for basically 2 years, that progressed her demise or her downfall. And I know she died early, probably in part because of loneliness and isolation. And so I know you've talked about the social infrastructure. I think at one point you mentioned the idea of the practice of creating friendships.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such an important thing that you just said there. And I think as adults, we sort of lose that ability because we don't have that infrastructure. We're not kids going to the playground anymore. We're adults who live much more in digital worlds, sometimes very digital and virtual worlds. How can we create those practices for friendship, and what does that look like?
Well, I think the first step is to say, what if friendship was a practice? Like meditation is
Hmm.
a practice. You get better with time. Playing golf is a practice. It's a sport, but it really is a practice. You get better at it the more you do it. You like going and snowboarding or skiing. That is a practice. So anything you're going to do that you practice and try to do, you can get better at. For some reason, we've never thought of friendship that way.
Hmm.
And yet the people I most admire in my life are the people who are just damn good friends. So they have developed their practice. So what are some ways to develop your practice? Number one, it's to get clear on who matters in your life. So someone who has lots and lots of friends, but none of them are very deep, that's fine. I mean, I don't want to say that's a bad thing, but when they have a cancer diagnosis, if they have superficial friends or friendships that are based upon transactional relationships, they're not going to have somebody to talk to, and they may feel lonesome. And so I think the quality and depth of relationships is really an important part of thinking about friendship as a practice. So first of all, think about who are the people who you'd like to actually deepen that friendship with. Secondly, look at what are the conversations you can have. And this is something that MEA specializes in. We are in the business of curating provocative questions that create life-altering conversations. And so you could look at Arthur Aaron. He's an academic. Last name is spelled Aron. He's a new NYU professor. Arthur Aaron's 34 questions. These are 34 questions that are by their nature going to help you to deepen a friendship or a romantic relationship or a spouse's connection. So start with, see it as a practice. Secondly, figure out who it is that's your target market that you want to go deeper with. Thirdly is make the time to spend with them. And finally, bring to the time you're going to spend with them conversations that are meant to open up what we at MEA call the third vault. The first vault is the facts of your life. It's what you talk about at a cocktail party. The second vault is the stories of your life. They're important, and knowing your narrative is good, but sometimes you get caught up in your stories. The third vault is talking about what's really going on in your life, the essence of who you are and the emotions you're feeling right now, good, bad, or indifferent. And having conversations from the third vault, wow, it deepens them pretty quickly.
Do you have one in mind? One of the 34 questions that you can remember and share with us?
I'll give you some MEA questions.
Yeah.
Here's the questions that you could ask with your close friend. 10 years from now, what will you regret if you don't learn it or do it now? Now, that's a great question because anticipated regret is a form of wisdom. And so imagining something you might regret might give you the catalyst to try something new. Okay, here's another one. What has been your biggest life lesson in your career and in your relationships? So 2 lessons, each one gets a wisdom bumper sticker. What's the lesson you've learned? How did you learn it? And if you could distill down what you've learned into a bumper sticker, what would the bumper sticker say that has your wisdom fingerprints all over it? Here's another one. Who in your life have you most admired as somebody who had an influence on you? And what are the qualities that you most admired in them? And how are you trying to emulate those? Now, none of those are on Arthur Aaron's list. Those are on Chip Conley's list. But Chip Conley doesn't have a famous list of 34. But MEA has a lot of great questions. And these, I've just given you 3 of many of the kinds of questions we ask in our online courses, but also in our workshops in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Baja California on the beach, where our 2 campuses are.
Yes. I think that sounds like would be great, an idea to use that with your friends. And I remember right after COVID, when we started to come back, that people seemed unfamiliar with how to interact and how to say something that was of meaning or ask the right questions, to be intimate, to have deep conversations. And in some ways, I think we're still sort of in that space around how do we reconnect? And then of course, you add the virtual worlds that a lot of us are spending a lot of time in. And we're going to meetings, these Zoom meetings and these WebEx meetings, and we don't have people with their cameras on because we're not even seeing the whites of their eyes anymore. We're just got this 2-dimensional thing. So I think the movement that you're creating and these questions that you're asking, I think is extremely important during this time.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think also in the era of artificial intelligence, human wisdom and emotions are meant to be the balance for AI. They're both going to be part of our lives moving forward. Human emotions and wisdom have always been a part of our life, but AI is going to become a more dominant part of our life, and we better get good at what it means to be human.
Yes.
if we're going to balance that out.
I remember thinking about that. We had a person on the show. We've had many people on this particular show talking about AI. And I began to realize we need to start defining what it means to be human. That is not something that can be replicated by ChatGPT or something that has to do with AI or a bot. Like, what are those characteristics? And in some ways, I think over a period of time, I've noticed that we have begun to almost like reverse anthropomorphize the human experience, meaning that we've begun to define the human experience in digital terms, or that we have digital expectations on the human interaction, the speed by which we need to respond to people. You know, our language is beginning to change because of the digitization of the world. And I think that your point's so well taken. We got to take a claim that says, this is what it means to be human. AI, knock yourself out. It'll be a great tool for us, but we need to keep claiming that.
I mean, you know, obviously emotions are part of what it is to be human, but I think a chatbot can actually emulate emotions. But I'd say the number one thing that what it means to be human is to have the wealth of experiences you've had in your life. Maybe AI will get to the place where they can talk about experiences. And of course, if there are robots that have AI, then you know, maybe there's more. But I actually don't think AI is going to be able to very easily say, you know, here was my experience that I had, and here's what I learned from it. You know, our painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom. So having life experience that you can metabolize, turn into lessons that then become the school of hard knocks wisdom that you have, is not something that AI is going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think we have a real opportunity to have a leg up.
You and I were met a few months ago, and we got into this conversation over email, which is really kind of what brought this conversation together today.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about wisdom, and then we had this back and forth about what's the difference between wisdom and intuition.
Yeah.
So what is your current definition regarding wisdom versus intuition, and why is it necessary in an age of AI?
Well, let's start with the second question you have. So AI is a knowledge tool. It has commoditized knowledge of the world. It's commoditized the past of everything that is on the internet so that you can access all of that historical knowledge. What it's missing is that life experience. It's also missing the future. Because really what AI does is it consolidates all this historical internet information, but it doesn't, it has the capacity to discern and be a futurist. There's no doubt you could ask a futurist question to AI. But what wisdom is about is that it's based upon a variety of things. Wisdom is an abstract element, and it includes your own personal wisdom based upon experience, the collective wisdom of like, that is like consciousness that you're maybe able to tap into. And then intuition that may come from whether it's your own soul or the intuition of connecting to something much bigger than you. So I think back to your question about wisdom, and so I think wisdom is really important in an era of commoditized knowledge due to AI. So what is wisdom, and what is that? How does that compare to intuition? To my mind, intuition is wisdom still has a mental component to it. It feels like wisdom is the fusion of your brain, your heart, and your gut. And from my perspective, wisdom is hard won in your own life. It often is based upon life experience. Wisdom it can be, you can learn it from other people too, but it's generally your own life experience. Intuition feels very much the gut. Intuition doesn't feel like it's coming from the brain or the heart. It
Mm.
feels like it's all that microbiome in your gut, that second brain that sometimes people talk about, which is you have a brain here, then you have a brain there.
Yeah.
And that brain there, I don't think that we as a society or as scientists have done a very good job of figuring it out yet. Like, where's that intuition coming from? Is it coming from your past life experience, from pattern recognition, or is it coming from an ability to have a spiritual Wi-Fi in your gut that actually is connecting to something much deeper and bigger than you? So I guess I would summarize by saying I think intuition is even more abstract than wisdom
Yeah.
because it's the source of it is even less clear.
You once said, I saw something that we rent our bodies. What did you mean by that?
What I meant by that is that at birth you are issued a body, a very small one. It's a rental vehicle. Your job in the course of your lifetime is to take care of this rental vehicle. And in the early half of your life, the first half of your life, you often, you polish that car. You make sure that that body's looking good. Short-term vanity is what, is how you think about your vehicle. But in the long term, the second half of your adult life, it's about long-term maintenance. You have some
Mm.
dings and some chips and maybe a fender bender, and some of them have been repaired and some of them have not. But what matters is not what the body looks like on the outside. It's like, what does it feel like on the inside? And so
Mm.
you want a comfortable vehicle to be traveling in, and it's part of the reason why you want to make sure you're using high premium fuel. As opposed to
The
so,
junk.
and that high premium fuel is really the food you put in your body, but it's also the messages you give yourself, etc. So yeah, and I think over the course of your life, your body and the rental vehicle you have sort of disintegrates. It really it it corro- it isn't fresh and new anymore.
Yeah.
So part of what we have to learn in our lifetime is how do we grieve the the loss of youth in our body, and how do we maintain it as best we can, and then how do we learn how to let go,
Mm.
knowing that at some point the body and the rental vehicle will just fade into the soil.
What I was struck by that comment, in addition to what you just beautifully said, was this distinction that I am not my body. That
Oh,
this idea that the body was something that I'm renting, but
yeah,
by virtue of saying that, then what is the it? What is the I?
yeah,
What inhabits that? And I'm thinking back to you said you had a near-death experience. We've talked about almost in some ways, without necessarily saying it, there's a sort of a spiritual awakening that we're discussing here with respect to the work that you're doing and that you and I do. So what is that? What houses this rental unit? Going back to
yeah.
Airbnb in a way, but using the car metaphor.
So the body helps carry the mind, the heart, and the soul. And so it's the vehicle that allows those other things, the mind, the heart, the soul, to have an encasement around it. I'm not going to spend any time on the mind. We all know what a mind is.
Yeah.
The heart is a very interesting thing in terms of that you can't live without a heart, but we also imbue on the heart this element of emotions and of love. The heart and the love are almost the same thing. So does that love exist when you no longer have a body, when the heart is not beating? Yeah, I mean, we love people who have passed. So do you have the capacity to give love after you've died? That's where you get into the soul question.
Hmm.
And my belief is that we have a soul. It incarnates in this body. It has the job of the soul in this lifetime is to evolve its consciousness in the greatest way it can. And when the body is ready to expire, the soul is meant to go to some parking lot until it actually has a new incarnation. And whether that is I don't know if that's in an animal or in a plant or in, another human. I think it's probably another human, but I don't know.
Hmm.
How do you know these things? What I know from my NDE experience was that I felt like I was floating, and I felt like I was flying, and I felt like I was not constrained by my body. And I felt a deep oneness with the world. And that kind of feeling is not something you necessarily feel with the body. Um, you need to sort of be outside of the body to feel that sense of oneness.
If I may ask, did you want to come back
Yeah.
while experiencing this rather euphoric, flying and being free?
Yeah, I did want to come back. Because the message I got was I'm supposed to slow down.
Uh,
And I've done a crap job.
do
I've
you
done a
mean
crap
now you
job.
are doing a crap job, or you back then?
No, I mean, here's the good news is I have used that experience, which is 17 years ago, um, as an opportunity to have a constant reminder that I need to slow down,
Hmm.
which is something I need. And so it has served its purpose. It also served its purpose for me to sell my company and all kinds of things. It was a catalyst for a bunch of changes. But more than anything, it gave me the sense that I can have that euphoric sense while being here on Earth as well. Um,
And
so
do you?
I might, yeah, of course I do at times, and even without any mind altering substances.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I can have, there's a time I was with a friend of mine, Lisa, and we were just sitting. We were in a outdoor backyard of a bar facing downtown San Francisco, and there was a wind, and she and I just looked at each other. And I said to her, and we'll never forget this. I said to her, "Are you feeling the same thing I'm feeling right now?"
Hmm.
That's sort of what you would say if you were taking mushrooms or psilocybin, but we weren't. We were literally, and we had not even had a glass of anything to drink yet. But it was just so preciously beautiful.
Hmm.
And our friendship is strong, but we don't see each other that often. And I think there was just sort of a radiant energy between us that was not, it was about love, but it was not a romantic love. And she laughed because she says, "Yeah, I'm feeling exactly the same thing right now." And so we were sort of in this force field of something that felt a little otherworldly. And so, yes, you can experience this, in the realm of Earth, um, but you have to slow down.
Hmm.
The word awe, AWE, is really important. How do you cultivate awe in your life? And it's a big piece of our MEA curriculum, because when you actually you curate awe in your life, you feel the sense of miraculous. You feel that you're connected to something bigger than yourself. You feel moral beauty. You feel collective effervescence. You see that nature is a teacher in your life, and these are the kinds of things that we want to welcome in our lives, especially in the second half of our life.
So then how do you do that? I mean, if those peak experiences sometimes come to us almost like a whisper, almost like a breeze that we didn't anticipate. It sounded
Yeah.
like with your friend, you didn't say, okay, let's go sit down here. And in 20 minutes, we're going to create an experience of awe. I know I mentioned before we started this conversation that it's snowing like crazy up at the mountain that I'm nearby. And I'm thinking like, maybe I'm going to go up. Why? Because I'm thinking that there could be an experience of awe up there. Because when I'm floating and skiing down, the slopes, and I've got the blue skies and the mountains around, I'm in a certain level of consciousness that I love.
Yeah.
And I have it with friends and family and different experiences that sometimes happen, sometimes don't. But with your work that you do, What are some practices for people to create awe?
Well, I would highly recommend Dacher Keltner's book. He's a UC Berkeley professor, started the Greater Good Science Center, and he's on our faculty at MEA.
Hmm.
And he teaches workshops on awe. His book, Awe, AWE, focuses on the 8 most common pathways to awe in the world. And so I just recommend that as a starting point. Secondly, to notice awe, you have to have slowed down and you have to have not been distracted. So you have to create the conditions for awe to potentially tap you on the shoulder. I don't necessarily think you can manifest awe without some serendipity. I think, anybody who tries to have a second date as magical as the first date and they have a lot of expectations and they're controlling it, is probably not going to have that same magic or that same awe.
Right.
So so a certain amount of it is to create the conditions for awe to appear. And I would just read Dacher's book as the way to learn more about that. But as a lot of it at MEA, we do it every week. Every single week, we have workshops in Santa Fe and Baja. And by the end of the week, people felt like, oh my gosh, that was magic. And I can't explain what just happened. And so much of it has to do with taking off identities and mindsets that are constraining us. And so, a real big impediment to feeling awe is to feel weighed down and burdened by what you expect of yourself, by the obligations you have in your life, by distractions. Watching TV, you're probably not going to feel awe. Yes, you might feel awe watching a particular show, Super Bowl, and something wildly happens and you're all in a room with 6 people together and you're like, and yeah, that could happen. But generally speaking, most things like TV are distractions from awe. And so, you need to really peel back the distractions in your life and say like, okay, how do I go for a walk in nature with my dog?
Yeah.
And spy on the divine.
I'm thinking about Eckhart Tolle right now, about his work on the power of now.
Yep.
And that made a big impact on me. I know when I read it was around just that sense of getting to the present moment and getting to the point where you really are listening and breathing and being here, because that's where everything is. That's the source of all happiness. That's the source of all creativity, is in the moment. We're not going to be necessarily creative or inspiring or inspired by focusing on the future or the past. It happens right now.
Yep.
Well, let me shift gears a little bit. I want to ask you a kind of a broader question. History seems to repeat itself. And I was just in Italy for 3 weeks and just was walking through this long museum called Italy that was nothing but history and beautiful architecture and food and so forth. And I've been fascinated recently by a book called The Fourth Turning, which I'm sure you're aware of, that talks about the fact that through the research of these people, we seem to have these 80-year cycles that keep repeating itself, and they've broken down into 20-year subcycles of the high, the awakening, the unraveling, and the crisis. And right now, according to this research, we're in this 20-year period called the crisis. What role does the modern elder play during this time, Chip?
Oh God, we're supposed to solve the world's problems.
Yeah, right?
Well, let me say this, is that when we were starting MEA and we knew we wanted it to be a wisdom school that really helps people to cultivate and harvest their wisdom, what we did is just did some research. We saw that, in the history of humankind, that mystery schools or wisdom schools have often emerged during times when the collective human consciousness is severely tested. So it's interesting, is that the idea of wisdom elevating, because when when things get really complicated, what you need to do is to discern down to what's essential. So if you think about knowledge, knowledge is something you accumulate, you add, plus, plus, plus. Wisdom is a division equation. It's the square root of something. It is distilling down. And so the difference between knowledge and wisdom is knowledge adds, wisdom distills. So when life is complicated, you do not need addition. You need not even subtraction. You need the square root. You need to get down to like what is base and essential. And that's what wisdom's about. So yes, I agree. We are in, and I've read that book, for the fourth Turning, and it's a very interesting analysis. And actually, Steve Bannon, I think it's his whole philosophy in giving feedback to Donald Trump was based upon that book. And long story short is, I don't want to get political because that's very complicated.
Yes.
What I do want to say is, I think in crisis, getting clear on what's essential is the most important thing you can do. And getting clear on what's essential that is an alternative way of describing wisdom. So why not have wisdom schools? Why not have places that help people learn tools and practices that allow them to tap into their wisdom and maybe their intuition?
Right. Along that same line, I know that you, I believe, recently spoke to the Global Wellness Summit, if I have that correct. And I know you're a big fan of Blue Zones. You've worked with them. We're actually doing
we're partners with them. They do Blue Zone workshops.
Yeah, and I'm actually getting involved in doing some Blue Zone facilitations to bring Blue Zone health into healthcare. Love it. I'm a big fan of it. The pillar, one of them, of the 9 is around purpose. And I remember when I first saw that, reading about the fact that purpose was one of the 9.
Yep.
It brought me back to about 32 years ago when I started my little business out of Seattle, Washington, and the very first workshop I ever did, and I was trying to test out this idea of starting this new business, was called Discover Your Life Purpose. And here we are, 32 years later, we're still obsessed with purpose. And I thought, my gosh, this is a concept that has not died. We're still hungry for it. We obviously don't have it. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep talking about it. So what is it from your perspective around how important is purpose? And then do you have any, easy suggestions about how people can either define it, because maybe we already have it, we just haven't named it, or to discover it and create it?
So we've sort of gotten purpose wrong. So purpose is very important. Let me start by saying that. Blue Zone shows that. Phil Pizzo's work at Stanford, studying people over 50, shows it. The Harvard study of adult development shows it. But we tend to think of it in the West and in the United States in particular as a possession. Oh my God, everybody else has a purpose, but I don't have one. As if it's something you left, accidentally in the bathroom at the roadside gas station. Purpose is not a possession. It's a way of acting and being. So being purposeful is the way to find your way to purpose. So what then comes up is like, okay, what does it mean to be purposeful? Well, I think there's a big P purpose and there's a small P purpose. Big P purpose is what's on your LinkedIn profile. Small P purpose is what's said about you at your eulogy. So they're both important. A big P purpose is sort of obvious. It's usually career oriented. It's something that will get you some attention from others. Small P purpose are the things that people really admire about you, the little things you've done, the mentorship you did, the fact that you got a dog park in your local community, neighborhood park. It's the political activism you might have done around a particular campaign. So it's actually writing in your journal every day. So let's start by saying, let's not get too distracted with big P purpose. Let's actually realize that small P purpose also is life-giving. And then if I were to give the shortcut of, how do you cultivate purpose? Because MEA has cultivating purpose workshops. I think there are four pathways that really are important to purpose. Number one is something that excites you. That's pretty obvious. Number two is something that agitates you. That's not obvious. Reed
Hmm.
Hastings started Netflix because he was agitated that Blockbuster Video was going to charge him $60 for 3 videos that were 3 weeks late, and he had to pay. He said, "I'll buy them." And they said, "That's our racket. You know, you're going to be late, and then you're going to buy them, and that's how we make our money." And so he went to the gym, and he was at the gym and said, like, "Fuck that." And like, I should start a service that actually gives you 3 DVDs as long as you want them or as short as you want them. Because when I go to the gym, they don't keep track of how many times a month I come or don't come. So agitation can lead to purpose.
Yeah.
Curiosity. What are you curious about? This is the third one. Whatever you're curious about could lead you to purpose. And finally, number 4, what's neglected from earlier in your life that you were passionate about, but that you've lost track of? And
Hmm.
so those are, to me, so that was a very encapsulated 5 minutes on purpose. Clearly, it's a topic that I talk about a lot.
Yes.
And I think we get it wrong. I think we get it wrong because of the fact that we are so obsessed with the ownership of
Right.
purpose.
It's almost like a commodity. I'm going to go down to the store and pick up some purpose on the way home from work.
That's
I
right.
mean, and
That's
it's translated into other types of leadership. Like we talk about leadership brands. We talk about, what is your why, Simon Sinek, these things that have really become very popular in business, which seems to come back to this idea, like I need a purpose. I need to grab something that is outside myself and then I can align myself as almost like literally like a brand, like I'm wearing a Gucci pair of shoes, that's my it has gotten a little too commercialized in some ways.
Well, I think it's gotten performative. Like it's a possession that you need to perform to go find and discover, and um, when in fact it's really something you cultivate. It's something you develop inside
Yeah.
yourself, and again, if you find things that make you feel purposeful, you're on your path to purpose.
Yeah. So Chip, what's up for you in the next few years? I mean, you're obviously got some great things going on right now.
I
You had
mean,
a great question, like you said, provocative questions can really help in the development of a person's direction. I'll go back and ask you the question that you would put up. In
mhm.
10 years, what would you regret not doing now if you were to look back?
Yeah. What I would regret is not spending more time with my 2 sons, who one
Hmm.
of them turned yesterday, turned 10. The other one turns 13 on on December 12th.
Hmm.
And, spending their teen years with them is really important to me. So
Hmm.
that's for the next 10 years. Beyond that, and there's just the sense that MEA is meant to be a catalyst for more midlife wisdom schools around the world to open up, and more regenerative communities. We have these residential communities we've created as well, where we're really disrupting 2 industries: higher education, and saying, hey, why don't you have midlifers in your schools? Because guess what? A lot of you liberal arts schools are going to go out of business if you don't figure
Hmm.
out a new model. And number 2 is, hey, you retirement communities, it used to be 50 years ago, the average age of the person who moves in there was 65. Today, it's 83. You have a bad model.
Hmm.
What are you going to do? And so we're creating these regenerative communities, these intentional communities that are oriented toward people wanting to regenerate themselves. And we have one in Baja with 26 bedrooms, and we're going to have a bunch of them in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So long story short is I got my hands full between my
Yes.
sons and that.
Yes. Chip, thank you so much for your time. How can people follow what you do?
Um, so I have a daily blog. It's called Wisdom Well. It's on the MEA website as well as my own personal website. So if you go to the free wisdom part of the MEA website, you'll see Wisdom Well, and just sign up for it. It's free, and you get a daily email, a microdose of wisdom from me each day. Um, that's one way. LinkedIn is my
Hmm.
primary, vehicle I use for social media. Yeah, and just check out my books.
And you've got two concurrent locations running workshops, right?
Yeah. So
Talk about that.
the MEA website's meawisdom.com, and we have workshops in Santa Fe or in Baja, 2 different locations, as well as online programs as well.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great.
All right. Great. Thank you, Dean.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadervation.